Assalamu alaikum. First, let me say how honored I am to be here tonight to join as you celebrate and continue to support one of the most important civil rights organizations in the United States today, and that is CAIR. Though you have 18 years of service, this particular time is of particular significance and of particular challenge, where you judge people and organizations and movements is how they operate at the time in history that are most challenging. And as you gather this year, the challenge of Islamophobia, the challenge of people trying to bait a reaction so they can therefore move forward with their intolerance and hate and bigotry is at a fever pitch. Isn't it interesting that we tend to always want to scapegoat people rather than deal with the building of a peaceful and proud nation on its own? So, for one season it's Irish, another season is Jews, another season is African Americans, another season is Muslims. It's always insecure men that need boogeymen to have as targets rather than to dig in and help to build the country collectively for what the country's supposed to stand for. Are there extremists in the Muslim community? There are extremists in every community. And we cannot have a different standard on the Muslim community than we have on every community in the United States and around the world. Several things, though, that I recommend. First, you must do as CAIR does, condemn those that are wrong, but don't do it by trying to in any way be ashamed or hide for who and what you are. Because the minute haters can force you into in any way trying to behave differently than what you are, they have won the battle. People must understand that the bait that many of these right-wing haters try to do is exactly to exacerbate tensions, knowing, as our executive director said, the weak ones of us will respond. I remember when I was called to Florida on the Trayvon Martin case, a case that CAIR stood in and supported. Immediately there were some that said, Reverend Sharpton, we do not believe in marching, we don't believe in peace. We want to put up a reward and go after Zimmerman, who killed Trayvon Martin. Immediately, the mother and father and I held a press conference to denounce that. Why? Because if we have to turn to vigilantes to get justice, rather than have the justice system work for us, what have we achieved? The goal is to have equal protection under the law and to be treated as any other American citizens. The goal is not to go for the bait and then those that are the victims become the victimizers. Fish wouldn't get caught if they kept their mouth shut. Be very careful what they try to make you say or do, because they're trying to bait you to, in many ways, discredit the credibility and the love and the patriotism of your community. Now, why I respect CAIR is they will take a stand when others hide. I can tell you, and I know Imam Sharaj very well, and he can bear witness, there's always those few in every community that pay the price for the many. You will meet millions of African Americans that will tell you about the civil rights movement and how they marched. Most of them are lying. There were only a few that marched, and even fewer than that went to jail. I can't tell you how many people I meet on a weekly basis that stop me in airports and stop me in the streets and say, I voted for you for president in 2004. Well, if they did, we'd be having this dinner in the West Wing of the White House tonight. It is always the few that pay the price for the many. So the least you could do, if you're not willing to be out front, if you're not willing to take the attacks, if you're not willing to put in the time, if you're not willing to suffer the scrutiny and the pressure, the least you could do is support groups like CAIR that takes the weight for you. Because let me tell you, when they profile Muslims, they don't wait and see if you have a CAIR card in your pocket. They don't ask for your W-2 form to see if you're a successful business person. Profiling you based on your faith will happen regardless of your income, regardless of your status, your stature. If they go after one Muslim, they'll go after all Muslims, and you've got to have enough sense to stand up as one to protect yourself. I remember when we fought the cases of racial profiling against African Americans. It came into public notice in New Jersey. The irony was they were not profiling poor blacks. They were profiling blacks that would drive down the 95, Highway 95, in late model cars, saying, how did you afford that car? How did you afford to live in these mansions? It was the well-to-do blacks that were being profiled. They weren't profiling blacks in Harlem. They knew we lived in Harlem. It wasn't strange to see us in Harlem. It was strange to see us in the Gold Coast of New Jersey. So when wealthy or successful Muslims act like they're above the problem, you will find yourself humiliated and disrespected, and then you will want the support of those active in your community that if you had supported them in the first place, you would not have become the next victim. They will attack. I am always marvel at how those of us that are activists are treated to such crazy standards. I remember earlier this year, we had the marches around voter ID, which I will get to. I got back to New York, I got a call from an attorney, Benjamin Crump, who put on the phone two people, parents of Trayvon Martin, who told me what happened to their son. I had not heard of the case. It had not been covered outside of Florida. They wanted me to come to Florida and help to rally national attention. We called a national march. We had about 30,000 people. We put it out there. It became a national issue. Immediately, the right wing says, there's Reverend Al again. getting publicity, ambulance chasing. I am not an ambulance chaser. I'm the ambulance. They call us because we'll come. Many won't come. There's nothing to chase. So when you hear them say activists like me, activists like CAIR want publicity and attention, that is exactly what we want. Nobody calls us to hide their issue. They call us to expose their issue. It is our job to get publicity on the right things and to put light in dark places. Don't apologize for making it front and center in the minds of the American public when things are done wrongly and when things are done against what you know is to be right. We should not be shy. The right wing owns networks, newspapers, all kinds of things, and then they have us apologizing for having mere ways of answering their hate. We must also exercise everything at our disposal to liberate ourselves from these double standards. Yes, as I sat and listened, we are 39 days from an election. Already they are trying to suppress people from voting in key states. Isn't it interesting that all of a sudden, 34 states come up with state laws that they want to change and have government photo ID for you to vote in certain states. Now, the right wing says, well, Reverend Al, you have to have ID to do anything. We're not against ID. What we're against is why do we need new photo government ID? Well, what do you mean? Well, the only reason we need new procedures is if there's been fraud. According to the Justice Department, there's been 0.0003% fraud. So voter ID is a solution looking for a problem, not a problem looking for a solution. But we need to have ID. We always had ID to vote. Why don't we have the same ID that we had when we voted for Reagan and Nixon and Carter and Clinton and Bush? Let me get this right. All of those elections, the ID we had was fine. Now we get to the re-election of Barack Obama. Now we need special ID. The Brennan Institute estimates 5 million people that voted last time are at risk not to vote this time. That is why we're fighting those laws. But not only are we fighting those laws for that reason, in a democracy, we preach democracy all over the world. We preach democracy in the Middle East. How do you preach democracy around the world and then try to eliminate people from voting in the United States? So our challenge is that everybody ought to come out and vote in the numbers that would surprise people and vote your interests. CAIR doesn't endorse candidates. No civil rights group does. But we can say, vote for those that represent your interests. And the reason people fought and died to get the right to vote is that we should not be controlled or owned by any party, but we should be guided by our common sense and our self-interest. And those that are ashamed to stand with you in public, you ought to be ashamed to vote for them in private.